Welcome. Hello, everyone. We're happy to welcome you today to Polyvagal Institute and to our community. We're really happy that you've joined us for today's event, which is part of our series, A New Year's Journey of Self-Care. My name is Caroline. I'm the Director of Communications here at PVI. And also online with us today is Mac, who is our Communications Specialist. And Mac's going to share a few housekeeping reminders with you all before we get started. Hey, Mac.
Thanks, Caroline. Appreciate that. Hello. So great to see you all here today. For those of you who are new to Polyvagal Institute, I'll share a little bit about us. We're an international nonprofit organization based in the US with a mission of creating a safe and connected world through the principles of polyvagal theory. We provide education, training, and resources to a global audience of learners. And if you haven't already, we invite you to visit us online at polyvagal.org. We'll be taking questions at the end of the practice today as time allows. So if you have a question, please enter it in the Q&A section of Zoom and not in the chat. And in order to avoid distractions, we will be disabling chat and the Q&A during the practice, but we'll turn them back on afterwards. So you're encouraged to turn your camera on if you feel comfortable doing so. However, we do ask that you please keep your microphone muted throughout the event so that all attendees can hear the presentation. And closed captioning is available via Zoom. I think you can turn on captions using the settings at the bottom of your screen. And with that, pass it back to Caroline.
Thanks so much, Mac. So I'm really happy to welcome today Sandra Hinojosa to PVI. Thank you for being here with us today, Sandra. Sandra is a best-selling author, somatic experiencing practitioner, and certified life coach. In her professional practice, Sandra specializes in helping Latinas and others create an intentional life to overcome familial and cultural expectations, fears, and limiting beliefs. During this somatic alignment practice, Sandra will guide us in regulating our nervous systems to regain an internal sense of safety in the here and now. Together, we're going to learn ways to begin to increase resilience so that triggers and life in general doesn't feel as overwhelming. And we'll figure out ways to create more space for regular life experiences in the everyday. Sandra, welcome.
Thank you so much. I am very excited to be here. I gotta be honest, when I got the invite from the Polyvagal Institute, I did do a happy dance. So I am very excited to be here and share this space with you guys. Thank you so much for being here. And hola to fellow Latinas if they are out there as well. I'm gonna go ahead and share my slides. Okay. Okay, perfect. So what we're going to be talking about is how to bring in a little bit more ventral energy. And don't worry if you don't understand that term, I will walk you through this. The first thing is this is your space. So make sure you're as comfortable as you can be. I have a little pillow, I have a little blanket in me. So just take this a couple of seconds just to notice how can you make yourself more comfortable, make sure that you have a good support, even play with the distance of the computer a little bit just to notice what feels good to you. And just maybe even start a conversation with your body right now, just noticing how you feel. As you do that, I'll let you know that the presentation will be about 20 minutes. We're just going to talk about a few concepts that then we will practice in for about 20 minutes, and then we will have some questions. So like they say, you can use the Q&A afterwards. So feel free right now to take any notes that you want. But just so you know, we're actually going to be sharing the slides. So feel free to take whatever comments you need, but also know that you will have the slides after the session. And very important as well, practice self-care. We will touch on some topics that might feel a little bit triggering, a little bit overwhelming. If it does, please stop. Make sure that you situate again back in the room. Notice the things around you. Notice your arms, notice your legs. Look at the beautiful faces in here so that you can situate yourself and know that we are one nervous system right now, all of us together. So maybe this might be overwhelming for your nervous system, but all of us together, we can help hold whatever, comes up. I always say that whenever we go into the body is just conversing, is talking to us. So there is no right or wrong. There is no good or bad. There is only conversation that comes up. So we will make a space for it. You can certainly borrow my nervous system as well. So make sure also, if things get too much, feel free to walk around, notice your feet on the ground. Maybe, if you have a pet, invite them to come over for some cuddles or even co-regulate with a friend. So my intention for this space right now is learning resourcing as a practice for self-care. So a lot of time people ask me, okay, what is the one thing I could do? And I always go back to resourcing. We're going to explain why this is so important and ultimately how resourcing over time can help your nervous system regain coherence, flexibility, and ultimately resilience. Resilience is the sign of a healthy nervous system. It's a nervous system that is really enjoying life and experiencing all there is. So we will talk a little bit more about this. So the first thing, if you are new to polyvagal theory, to somatic practices, if you've been around and maybe asking questions, I know every single algorithm out there, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, is probably showing this word. What is regulation? Well, let me start what is not. A regulation, it doesn't mean that it's a nervous system that is calm 100% of the time. Yes, sometimes a calm nervous system is regulated, but not always a regulated nervous system is calm. So we're going to talk about what it is instead. What I think when I think of a regulated nervous system, I think of a system that is present, that is able to notice what's happening, is connected with yourself, connected with the world, connected with spirit if you're a spiritual person, is a nervous system that is noticing the cues in the environment, the cues of safety, the cues of danger, the cues of joy, the cues of sadness, everything that is happening. Which brings me to the next point. It's also a nervous system that is coherent, meaning if something that is angering is happening, you get angry. If something that is happening is saddening, you get sad. If something that is happening is funny, you laugh. If something that is happening is beautiful, you are moved. You notice that beauty. So your nervous system is responding to the experience and the cues that are happening around you, to the people that are happening around you, the situations that are happening around you. The other thing is that a regulated nervous system is flexible. So what that means is you're going through your life feeling safe, connected, and all of a sudden something might happen that gives you a little bit of cues of danger. Your nervous system activates and it goes a little bit into fight or flight, a little bit. It might not be completely dysregulated, but it's just kind of activating it a little bit, knowing that this is a time for you to kind of have all this energy to protect yourself or maybe disconnect. So that is another way of protecting. So your nervous system knows to activate, but then when the threat is gone, it also knows to come back to baseline. So it's able to do this up and down and up and down in response to life. So resilient nervous system is a nervous system that is able to be coherent, but also flexible. It moves with life. And when we have a regulated nervous system, we're able to experience all of life because, the sad parts, the angry parts, the joyous parts, the beautiful parts, they are all part of life. And that is ultimately what our nervous system allows us to do, experience all of life. So how does the nervous system become dysregulated? When it becomes too overwhelmed, when it runs out of resources to feel like it can be safe in the now. So when something is too much, too fast, too soon, too often, it could potentially drive you outside your window of tolerance. So the window of tolerance is a term by Dr. Dan Siegel, and basically it's this window where you can remain present, coherent, and flexible. But sometimes things will happen in your life because that is life. That become too much, too fast, too soon. And it might dysregulate you. And if it is too overwhelming for your nervous system, it could potentially get stuck. So sometimes, for example, you've heard the term of freeze, which is when your sympathetic and your parasympathetic come back together. And that is almost like imagining your car, the brake and the accelerator are on at the same time. And you can become stuck in there. Another reason, and that could drive to chronic dysregulation. So dysregulation is not a bad thing because it is meant to protect you. It's your nervous system jumping in to protect you from whatever is happening. It's when it becomes chronic that our experience of life changes. And sometimes when we get stuck, because our brake and our accelerator became on, for example, that is a place where you can become chronically dysregulated, and that's when your experience of life changes. The other thing is when you are unable to come back to baseline. You know that too often, that means that it's an event or a situation that keep on occurring in your life over and over and over. So think about, for example, someone that is experienced violence or is experienced war or is experienced unhoused. They are unhoused, so they are living on the streets, and that those cues of safety never really show up in your life as often. So it is possible that your new baseline becomes this hyper vigilance where you're always looking for something that might go wrong, or you might become completely dissociated as a way to protect yourself. So chronic dysregulation is when our nervous system loses coherence, flexibility, and, like I mentioned, ultimately resilience. So why is resourcing so important? This is a term that I want to introduce today. So imagine a seesaw. So you know the seesaws that you see in the playgrounds, right? So they go up and down and up and down. And normally you will need to have equal weight on both sides. Otherwise, you get stuck. I don't know if you've tried to do it with like a little child. You get stuck. The little child is over here, up there. And I want to make you aware that our nervous system is wired for protection. It is its role to protect us in this life, help us experience life, but also protect us. So it is going to be biased to look for the triggers, to look for the cues of danger so that it can protect us. And what resourcing does is it helps our body also start noticing the glimmers. So what triggers are the cues of danger around you. Glimmers is also a term, by the way, by Debdana, is the cues of safety, the cues of connection, the cues of joy. So when we resource, we help our body create balance between the triggers, the glimmers, the sadness, the connection, all of that, so our nervous system can keep on going up and down and up and down. And eventually, this resourcing, although you do it in times when you can ground yourself, when you can be by yourself, when you can be in a community like this one, it becomes an anchor that when you go out to the choppy waters of this regulation, your body remembers what safety and connection feels like, and it can come back time and time again after the trigger goes away, after the cues of danger disappear. It knows to come back. So that's why resourcing is so important. It's almost like practicing this flexibility way before you need it. So when you need it, your body has this memory of how to do it. So I'm going to talk a little bit about this. Obviously, this is the Polyvagal Institute, so there's a lot of people that know about this. But just quickly touching on this, as you guys know, this is a concept by Deb Dana, based on the theory by Dr. Stephen Porges. It's a metaphor of how our body reacts to what's happening in the environment, the hierarchy of the autonomic states. There are two branches of the nervous system, as you know. There is the parasympathetic, which is the vagus nerve, and the parasympathetic actually has two as well, which is the dorsal vagal, which is a disconnection, that dorsal shutdown. Your body looks like this a little bit. And then there is the ventral, which is up in here, which is the connection with the world. And then there is the sympathetic, which is activating, mobilizing energy, the one that drives you to fight or flight. And I'm going to explain what resourcing can help us do through using this concept. So now there is many versions of the polyvagal ladder out there. This is just my version. It's the one that makes it easy for me to remember. But please know there are many versions out there. This is just Sandra's version. So up in here is flock. And by the way, I'm going to use something that happened to me in February to share a little bit of this state. So in February last year, I was in an accident. I was fine. But it was fascinating to me as a somatic experiencing practitioner afterwards to notice what my body did to protect me. So at the beginning, I'm driving. It's a beautiful day. I'm driving. I live in Southwestern Ontario, so I'm driving. It's a beautiful day. There is no snow in the ground. So basically, it is a very safe drive. I have my favorite audiobook, and I'm just driving around. And all of a sudden, I see a car change lanes. Immediately, my body pumps so much energy into me to brake and just keep myself firm because there is a ditch next to me and I didn't want to fall in the ditch. So keep myself firm. I could feel my body bringing up all this energy. Now, remember, these are autonomic states, which means you don't get to choose. Your body chooses what is the best way to protect you. And in this case, my body chose fight or flight, which is immediately moved me into protecting myself by pressing the brake. When it became obvious that the car was going to hit me and push me out of the road, I lost connection. How do I know this? Because once I was out of the road and my car had stopped, I started having a really bad headache. And later I found out I had a concussion. I don't remember hitting my head. I don't remember at all. My body, when it became obvious that I wasn't going to be able to avoid hitting that car, it protected me by disconnecting. And I did have a bump in my head, so I know I hit my head. I don't remember hitting my head. I remember everything that happened as soon as the car stopped, but I don't remember that. So this is the way your body helps you protect yourself. And it definitely helped me. Now, I've been doing this for a while now, so I know that after an activation usually comes a discharge of energy. I allow myself to shake, which is what my body immediately started doing. My body wanted to cry. I allowed myself to cry. I called my husband so I could, sorry, I could co-regulate with him on the phone, and eventually he showed up with my son. So I allowed my body to go through the curve of activation and then deactivation, and then look at those cues of safety so I could come back to baseline. So those are the regular um, states of the autonomic system, but there are also these mixed states. You probably have heard of freeze, you probably have heard of fawn. Freeze is basically fight or flight together with flop. Imagine deer on the headlights, right? Which is like you have all this energy within you, but you can't move, you feel stuck. And fun is also a little bit like it. Fun actually involves a lot of this connection with the self, which is down here, the flop energy. And you're trying to protect yourself by establishing connection with someone else by giving up who you are. So a little bit of that disconnection. But the two ones that I want to
Bonne
talk
tisane.
the two ones that
Ouais.
I want to talk about right now, which makes me really, really excited when I talk about ventral energy, is fun and flow. So when we take this fight or flight energy and add a little bit of that safety and connection energy, the flock energy, the ventral energy, which is what we're talking about with resourcing, it becomes play, it becomes fun. The example that I think about often when I think about this autonomic state is the haka. I don't know if you've seen the Maori tribe of New Zealand do the haka. If you are a fan of rugby, if you've never seen rugby, anytime the All Blacks, which is a team of rugby in New Zealand, plays rugby, they always do the haka before, and it's a beautiful representation of this energy. It's like this energy of determination, of mobilizing, of pushing. It's the energy of activism, the energy that changes worlds. It's this beautiful energy of communities coming together to make a change. And that is what fight or flight feels like when you put in a little bit more ventral. Now, if you take the flop energy and add a little bit more ventral, it feels almost like savasana at the end of a yoga session. So you ever had a yoga session, at the end you're laying down in your mat and you've done all these movements and your body feels just so connected and so present and you feel so safe just sitting there in a stillness. And that's what that energy feels like. So when we bring ventral, when we bring resourcing, to our sympathetic energy, it feels like playfulness. It feels like excitement, like determination, like curiosity, like creativity. It feels like the energy that changes worlds. In certainly your world, my world. When you add ventral to the parasympathetic energy, it's this beautiful energy of a stillness and reflection and restorative rest. It's the energy of being with yourself in safety, being with the world in safety, so that you can be ready for the playfulness and the excitement and the determination that are driven by sympathetic energy. So that is why resourcing is such a beautiful way to practice self-care with our nervous system. So we're going to do that right now. So I'm going to take out this presentation, if I can find my mouse. And I'm gonna ask you all if you're willing just to make yourself really comfortable right now. Find a place that feel supported. I can see your faces in here, so it makes me feel connected to you like that. You can do that as well. If it feels too overwhelming to see many faces, you can choose just my face, or you can take it out. Just notice what feels better for your body. So just make yourself very comfortable. Make sure that you have support. If it feels too overwhelming, you can open your eyes. Sometimes when we close our eyes, we get too much into our head, but opening our eyes is a way also to practice safety. And I'm going to invite you just to do a quick scan of your body and just notice if you can find the one place that is the most comfortable. Whatever comfort means for you at this moment. It might mean supported, it might mean safe, it might mean pain-free, it might mean less painful. If you cannot find a place that feels really comfortable, then look for the place that feels just a little bit less uncomfortable. Dr. Peter Levine calls these places islands of safety. And I often like to imagine myself just kind of lounging in this island. It might be in your feet, it might be in your arms, it might be in your legs. Just notice what it is. And just stay there for a little bit, allowing your body to kind of tune in to this vibration of this space. I often like to imagine also bringing in my favorite seating. For me, it's a Muskoka chair because I'm in Canada. For you, it might be a beanbag chair or a hammock. And just imagine yourself just going into that space with that seating and just taking a rest. It's a big day, a lot of things are happening, but right now, you're going to experience this space in your body that just feels comfortable. And it feels just a little bit more connected. Sometimes when we go into our body wants to immediately chat with us and it starts giving us all these sensations and feelings, and we acknowledge them. I know we're also eager to talk to our body, but right now, we're just setting up the space for us to reconnect with our body. And from this space, I'm going to invite you to bring in a memory. A memory that makes you really happy right now. Sometimes people bring in memories that made them happy then, but then made them sad right now because that memory is not there. No, we're looking for something that makes you happy now. And if not a memory, look around you, your space, and see if you can find something that makes you really, really, really happy. Outside of my room, I actually have a beautiful cedar tree that is beautiful and big, and that's usually my resource when I'm doing a session. Just look for something that is a little bit of a glimmer in your life. And when you have it, notice what changes in your body. What does putting our attention and intention in such a memory, such a person, such a thing, what happens when our body experiences that? Does it feel warm? Does it feel like it grows? Whatever sensations we're feeling? Does it feel like we can breathe differently? Each one of our bodies has its own language. And as we become familiar with how our body experiences the world, we start a conversation with it about what it's like to be in this life, in this space, in this moment right now. And as we notice that positive thing, that positive situation, person, that memory, we are reminding our body of what joy feels like, what comfort feels like, what safety feels like. And we allow our body to just notice. For some of us, it might feel challenging to be in our body for too long, and that's totally fine too. That also is part of the conversation. We just notice that, and we thank our body for the beautiful conversation that it's having with us right now. And very slowly, we notice how our body is feeling right now. We widen our attention to the space that we're in. We feel our toes. We feel our fingers. You can even move them very slow. Our nervous system likes a slow movement. So just move them very slow, just noticing, kind of returning into the body. Just looking around your room. And I'm going to invite you to actually see if you can find what is the furthest point that you can set your eyes on. What is the furthest point? If you have a window, maybe you can see far through the window. If you're in your room, you can find what's the farthest point from you that you can see. Sometimes when I do this, it reminds me of lions at the top of a mountain, just looking far. It's a way for your body to feel safe just by noticing its environment and being able to orient itself. And then just notice your body if it needs to stretch a little bit, if it needs to shift a little bit. So just quickly to explain what we did first, the finding that comfortable place in your body, that's called grounding. And I love that saying grounding. I love to think of it as dialing down the noise so we can listen to the signal. That usually when I start grounding, my body immediately starts chatting with me. It starts giving me sensations, it starts giving me cues. But then I like to resource first before I start the conversation with my body because the resourcing is again created that anchor. So that happy memory, the happy person, that was the resource that we brought in. And we started noticing what resource feels like in our body. So that's the two things that we did today. We did first the grounding, which was finding that comfortable place, allowing our body to kind of come back into itself, and then the finding that happy moment, the happy person, the happy thing that reminds us of safety and connection and all of those things, and just getting our body once again familiar with that resource. Now you can practice this every day. Something to keep in mind is the nervous system moves slow, and when it comes to the nervous system, less is more. 30 seconds a day, twice a day, not more. And you will notice how those little interventions start reminding your body what it's like to come back to safety and connection. And little by little, you will start noticing those glimmers out in the wild a little more. So hopefully this was helpful and this was something that you enjoy. And I'm happy to take on questions. So feel free to type them in the Q&A. And yeah, I think it was a little bit faster than the 20 minutes I was expecting. You know, you practice and you time it, but hopefully this was a good intervention for you. So feel free to ask any questions you might have.
Thank you so much, Sandra. You have such a wonderful way of explaining a very complicated topic in a really relatable way. So thank you.
Thank you.
Jerry's going to turn the Q&A on. So those of you in the audience, if you'd like to enter your questions there, please do. Just a reminder that you'll receive the copy of the recording within about 48 hours of this live event, and we will be including Sandra's slide presentation with that as well. So you can expect to receive those by email. I'm just going to pull up the Q&A. So our first question is about coherence. Could you define and explain, perhaps with examples, what is coherence in the nervous system?
Yeah, so like I was explaining, coherence is your nervous system is reacting in a way that seems, I don't like to use the word adequate because that implies kind of like right or wrong, but it feels like in tune with what's happening around you. So let's say, for example, you're walking down on the street and then off the corner of your eye, you see a bicycle coming through. The coherent thing to happen is that your body is going to want to jump out of the way. The non-coherent way is you keep on walking like nothing is happening and you get smacked by the bicycle, right? So your body's acting coherence. Now, I am a somatic experience practitioner. Here's how we notice coherence. After grounding and resourcing, I always actually I do mostly online sessions. I always ask my client to do the screen so I can see most of their chest and their, and coherent looks like to me when I notice something is happening is I might notice one shoulder looks big higher than the other, or you might notice one leg feels bigger than the other, or you might notice one leg is higher than the other even though they're both at the same level. So coherence is experienced in the world, but also as a somatic experience practitioner, I can see it also in the body. You might notice, you know, your head is a little bit tilted instead of being like this. And I usually, what I do in the session, I bring it up to the client. Again, we're trying to put together the message the body is trying to convey, but usually a lack of coherence in how the pose is or even how the client is breathing. Sometimes you might notice, for example, a breathing that is not like this, is more like, then that gives me cues that there is some kind of compression somewhere in the body that the body is keeping. You might also notice recently in a session someone say, I feel like my left side is melting. So that tells me in the left side she had a lot of dorsal energy, that flop energy, but not on the right side. So that's lack of coherence as well, right? So I help them come back to the right side when they had a little bit more of that ventral connection energy so that the body could remember what it was like to be coherent. So it is a very complicated term, but um, it's becoming curious. Again, it's a conversation with the body. It's becoming curious about what are what is our body doing? What is our body saying? What is our body feeling? And when you notice that lack of symmetry, when you notice that lack of coherence in how it reacts to the world, those are cues that there is some experience that your body was unable to connect, to complete, was unable to express, and is trying to express it through that lack of coherence. So I was saying at the beginning how a calm nervous system is not necessarily um, a, sign that a nervous system is regulated, because you can have a calm nervous system in a very dangerous situation, and that might not be a sign of regulation. That might be a sign of dissociation. That might be a nervous system that is actually disconnected to protect itself. So when you're in a dangerous situation, a calm nervous system will be a lack of coherence, for example. So hopefully that helped answer that a little bit.
Yeah, thank you. We've got a lot of questions. This is exciting. Um, this one I really like. I can relate to this a lot as an overthinker myself. This person is asking what to do when we overthink. What are your tips during that initial grounding session when your brain just doesn't really want to focus?
And that happens, a body that is so used to being up on her head as a protection mechanism. I am a chronic overthinker as well. So meet your body where it's at. If your body is not quite ready to go in, it's because there might be a reason why it's not ready to come in. So we want to be very gentle and just start showing our body what's safe, that being in the body can also be safe. So some exercises that I like doing, for example, with a client really struggles to get back into the body, but wants to do it in a safe way, is just start noticing. For example, you can do this to your arm just for 30 seconds, a minute, just keep on going. And then just notice the difference between the two arms. Try to describe it, try to create a vocabulary. It feels heavy, it feels light. I can feel the fingers still doing this a little bit. I can feel one more relaxed than the other, one heavier than the other. And again, less is more with the nervous system. So maybe just do that for like 3 minutes and then come back later. Start showing your body that it's safe to be out of your head. Start training your body to recognize that it can be safe to be back in the body. You can also do that with your leg. Peter Levine has a beautiful exercise that's called the woo, the woo sound. So if you imagine those giant like horns from Austria, they're like woo. So you do the woo like 3 times. If it 3 times is too much, again, only you know what's too much. You gotta stay safe. You gotta stay within the window of tolerance. You can just go woo, and then just notice what it feels like in your body after doing that. So it seems like such a small shift, so small interventions, but we want to teach our body little by little. This is called, in somatic experiencing, we call this titration. Just little by little, start teaching our body again what safety feels like to be in the body. And the moment your body will start experiencing that safety to come back to itself, you will start noticing that you will be able to hold that grounding a little longer, to hold that resource a little longer. Hopefully that helped.
Yeah, we actually had a few questions about titration, so that definitely addressed some of those as well. Thank you. Um, this next person is asking, why do I feel so sleepy after doing these practices? Would you recommend a way to bring energy back into the body after a practice such as this?
So if I am doing a session with you one-on-one and you get really sleepy, that might be a sign that it was too much for your body. So this is the dorsal response kind of kicking in, kind of like that flop energy, if you remember at the very bottom. So what I will do is maybe take a step back and not go that long. Maybe do a little bit less, which was a reason why I wanted to do this, but I could see some of the faces starting to feel a little bit restless, which is why I ended the exercise. Maybe just do 5 seconds. Now, um, something to keep in mind, and I again in the spirit of staying safe, if your body wants to go like this, there is a reason for it. So be very gentle, be very slow, be very mindful of just doing little bit by little bit by little bit. Because what we do when we start going into the body is the body's going to start feeling more. So you want to do it in a way that is very safe. So someone that gets really sleepy doing this exercise tells me that you specifically are going to have to go very slow, and if possible look for some support, a somatic experience practitioner or someone that has a lot of experience with somatic that can help you through that. Now, if you want to bring more presence to the body, you can do that. But again, bringing more presence to the body, you're also going to bring more feeling to the body. So if your body is trying to protect you by going a little bit into this sleepiness dissociation, just so you know, it might eventually feel a little bit overwhelming. But the same exercise that I did at the beginning of touching your arm, rubbing your legs, can bring a little bit of presence into the body. But just be mindful again that you're also bringing more feeling into the body. And if there is something that is too overwhelming for your body, um, you want to make sure that you do this in a safe way, preferably with someone in a one-on-one environment.
Thank you, Sandra. The next question, how would you adapt these practices for people in high activation or for those who feel more activated during or after the practice? Thinking about
Yeah,
folks in crisis or trauma responses and chronic stress.
yeah. So someone that feels really activated, somatic experiencing, we have a protocol for crisis. And when you read the actually, if you Google somatic experiencing crisis protocol, it's called a scope. And you will notice in that protocol, that's for high activation. You will notice in that protocol what you do is you slow down. So basically, what you do is first, the S is that you slow down. You very slowly walk around your space, 10 steps, very, very, very slowly. If you don't have a chance to move, I tell my clients sometimes this activation, for example, might happen at work. Where they're going to be like, what is she doing? She's like walking like this at work. They're going to be like, what's going on? Lock yourself in the bathroom and just go like this with your feet. Very, very slow. 10 times. And then you're going to hug yourself and you bring your face down. This reminds your body of its limits, that is a container. Sometimes what happens when we get too activated is our body forgets that it has all of our arms, all of our legs, by life, all of ourselves to kind of hold ourselves, to kind of hold this activation that is happening. So sometimes reminding your body of its limits, it can also help you decrease some of the activation. The other thing then is orient yourself. Remember, I was telling you, look for the farthest point that you can see. That's the orientation response. When you think about animals in the wild, they're they love looking out and having this wide area that they can look because it gives cues of safety to the body when it can see around it and notice there is no threat around it. So orient yourself, look around the room and notice what's happening around you. And then the last one, it will be co-regulate with someone. Look for someone that can regulate with you, go out to nature. I love, there is a thing about touching grass. I know we may joke about people touching grass, but there is a thing about taking off your socks and feeling the grass under your feet. So hopefully that can help you. Activation is normal. Again, it's part of the conversation. It's your body telling you there is all of these things that are making it feel unsafe. And we can show our body to come back, and then once we are back in a regulated state, back in a regulated, in a place where we feel against the coherence, the presence, we can be like, okay, that was interesting. That was interesting. There was something happening there that was activating my body. And we can then begin that conversation with our body about what's happening. So hopefully that helped.
That's great. Thank you, Sandra. So this question says, you suggested doing only small 30-second glimmers or perhaps 30 seconds of resourcing. What are the disadvantages of resourcing too much?
That you might activate your nervous system in a way that either goes into dorsal or then you get really activated to the point of like feeling anxiety, feeling too much, right? Again, there is people that can hold this for a long time, and you will know best what feels best for your nervous system. There's nothing wrong with activating too long. It's just you might kick your body out of the window of tolerance. And remember, we want to stay in the window of tolerance because retraumatization happens outside the window of tolerance. So we want to stay in that window.
Yeah, that's a really good note. Thank you. This person's asking about the technique of visualizing a happy memory as a way of resourcing. Are there variations on this that someone could use, especially
Yeah,
depending on, what environment you're in, where you are physically?
well, it can also be something that feels really, really good. Like, for example, when I do my sessions, um, as you can imagine, a session can be activating even for the practitioner, right? And even though I like to think that I have a lot of space in my nervous system, sometimes something might happen that activates you. I actually have little beads that I have in my fingers. And I often just have them in my fingers, and it kind of brings a cue of safety to my body. So you might have, for example, those balls, that are like this, or something that brings a cue of safety to your body. So yes, it can be something that is a memory, but it can also be a thing that you can hold, or it can be a blanket. Like right now, I have this pillow, and I love having this pillow to put my hands in here. And this pillow is a little bit. It provides a little bit of weight on my legs that also bring a cue of safety to my body. So finding out what feels good to you. And then have it around you, have these little resources around you. For me, I mentioned the tree before. The tree has become such a beautiful resource to me through sessions like this, through conversations with clients. It has become such a beautiful cue for me. So hopefully that helps.
Yeah, thank you. This next question is a little bit more general, but nonetheless super important. Just starting from the beginning, what do you feel is the easiest way to recognize if you're more in shutdown or fight or flight or ventral for someone that's just beginning to explore all of this.
Yeah, so ventral, you feel very connected. You feel safe. You feel, you know, two big cues for me of when someone is in the window of tolerance is they're able to be curious and they're able to be creative. Creativity goes out the window right when you are on the edge of that window of tolerance where you start getting out. You are also able to become curious. Think about it. Think of a time, remembering we're in the space so you don't get activated, keep your eyes on the screen, but think of a time when you felt unsafe. It's really hard to find solutions. It's really hard to see options. So for me, when someone feels like there are no options, that to me is a cue that they may be outside the window of tolerance. When it comes to fight or flight versus dorsal, it has to do a lot with what's happening in the body. Someone that is a fight or flight tends to be very constricted. I see their their hands go like this. I see their jaw really tight. I see their neck really stiff. That tells me they are in fight or flight. I also can see a lot of restlessness. I see this like restlessness that happen. That also tells me there is a lot of mobilizing energy. When you're in shutdown, you even can see it in the body. The body is almost like it is struggling to hold itself. Even the way you talk feels very monotone, like this. So those give me a little bit of cues. Remember, someone was asking, what if I'm feeling very sleepy? If I'm having a resourcing with you, a grounding with you, and I see you're starting going like this, maybe your eyes go like this, my immediate thought is they're losing presence, they're going into shutdown. This was too much. So then I gotta stop it, bring it that back into the body, bring it back into the space. So usually it's your nervous system, right? The fight or flight feels like mobilizing. The dorsal feels like immobilization. And then there are some thoughts. Also, it's the thoughts of the language that tells me in fight or flight you're angry. Things are not fair. You know, things are just not working out, and it feels like in shutdown it's like why even bother? It just feels like giving up, right? And now freeze feels like stuck. Like I want to, but I can't. I want to do this, but it's so hard. It's so all of these cues really help you understand where your body's at. In somatic experiencing, we say the nervous system talk to us in 5 languages, which is sensations, images, behavior, affects, which is feelings, and meaning. And when depending what state that you're in, all of these 5 will look different. Hope that helps.
Thank you. Yeah, and it's important to remember that it's a little bit different for everybody, right? Getting to know your own system and your own
Yeah.
responses. Yeah. So this next question is about panic attacks. And when you have that major onset of terror, fear, loss of control, is this resourcing practice applicable to that, or would you recommend something different?
It's going to be very hard for you to go into resourcing because again you are in this regulation, right? So again, looking for that scope that I talked about earlier. So if you Google somatic experiencing a scope protocol, it will come out. It's like this poster that has a tiger on it, and it goes through. The S is the slow down, the C is the contain, which I was talking about, of putting your hands like this. The O is the orient. Can't remember what the P stands for, but the E stands for, reconnect with the world, right? So I would recommend that over trying to regulate because your body is already up here. You need to help it feel safe again, and the scope is a great way to help your body feel safe.
That's really helpful. Thank you. We need to have you back to have a whole session just on scope, it sounds like.
Yeah.
That'd be really cool. This is a really good question. I'm sure a lot of people are thinking the same thing. Do you have a suggestion on how to start introducing this to children?
Yes. Yes. I have a 12-year-old, so I often when a situation happens, I want to give him the language of the body. It's funny because I notice in the world we have such a somatic language. We talk about cool it down, slow it down, or like feel the fire. Yet we don't, right? Like we're up in our head. So when something happens, I usually try to invite him to notice what's happening in his body. He might be like really upset about something, and I can notice that. I then notice your breathing is different. Can you notice that? I know. It is so upsetting what's happening right now. I validate his feeling, but I invite him to notice his body as well. Or sometimes, he's preteen right now, so we're dealing with the whole it's impossible. And I say, I know it does feel impossible, and I even can notice how your body is going like this. Do you notice that? Like, yes, it does feel impossible. So let's get together and see if together we can come up with a solution. And then I start noticing his shoulders just kind of lower a little. And well, if he wants to talk to me, sometimes he does storm out of the room. But if he wants to talk to me, then I'm like, and I can notice even just this little help is already making a difference. Do you notice that? I can feel your body just kind of feeling a little bit relaxing. Mind you, he's a preteen, so after a while, he's like, "Stop, mommy," but that's okay. It's giving him that little language of the body, right? Right, and less is more with that. And eventually, I want to think that one day, when he's an adult, I'll be that voice in his head, being like, "Oh my God, this feels really hard," and I can even notice my breathing being really hard. I like to think one day I will be that voice in his head when he's an adult. So I keep trying. I'll let you know how it goes in 20 years from now.
Yeah. Thank you, Sandra. Okay, so this is going to be our last question, and it's a common thread that seems to go through a lot of the questions here. Talking about chronic pain and suggestions for just starting to go into the body as somebody who lives with chronic pain and might be afraid of, experiencing that through somatic work.
Yeah.
What are your recommendations for sort of a starting point for that?
And it makes sense with chronic pain that your body will feel so unsafe being within the body. And, again, it's meeting the body where it's at. The concept that I love for that is, I mentioned it briefly, islands of safety. It is a concept by Peter Levine, because usually when there is pain, there will be a place in your body that will be a little bit less painful or a little bit less uncomfortable. See if you can locate that place and maybe stay there just for a few seconds, just reminding your body what it feels like to be in this island of safety. I like to think of, in the choppy waters of dysregulation and pain, there's always that little island where you can take a rest. So just finding those islands and staying there just for 30 seconds, maybe not more, because your body, it is experiencing a lot and you don't want to put more into it, but just kind of, when you go up the stairs, there's always a little landing before you go up the stairs again, and then that little landing. So I picture these islands of safety as, in this hard climb, you just find that place where you can just rest for a few little bit before you climb again. Give it a try, see if it works. Sometimes when we start putting our intention in those little islands of safety, actually, this is the same by Peter Levine, those islands of safety become continents. So just finding those islands and little by little putting your attention there, and hopefully one day they will become continents for you as well.
That's such a beautiful metaphor and so helpful. Thank you. So that brings us to the end of our time today. I want to thank everyone that attended here today. Just a reminder, we have additional free community events coming up as part of this series in the coming weeks. The next one is this Saturday, a free polyvagal informed yoga practice with Ariel Schwartz. You can find these at polyvagal.org/events. We will be emailing out a copy of this recording in the next 48 hours, and we'll include Sandra's slides as well. And we'll be sure to include a link to Sandra's website and to your book for those who are interested. But thank you so much, Sandra, for being here with us. This was a wonderful practice and wonderful to introduce you to the PVI community. Thank you for
Thank
being
you so much.
here. Okay. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody.